Oh, moo.
Welcome to the Know. I'm Ashley Jenkins.
I'm Mica Burton.
Meddling with upgraded hardware mid-generation was always going to be mad science, but so far, Sony's PS4 Pro experiment, not always yielding the best results.
After news broke yesterday that Skyrim Special Edition might actually run worse on PS4 Pro compared to the base model, there are now even more reports that these performance issues extended to multiple games.
This news comes courtesy Digital Foundry, who's basically the authority when it comes to documenting video game hardware performance. They've been putting a number of games to the test on PS4 Pro and have run into, well, a little bit of a hiccup with a handful of titles which simply run better on the PS4, even in 1080p mode, which is important because it's really easy for a game to perform worse in 4K, but in the same resolution, it's not good.
Rest in peace. So far, the games they found problems with include Skyrim, The Last of Us, Deus Ex Mankind, Divided, Mantis Burn Racing.
Oh, well, of course, Mantis Burn Racing,
my favorite game, and sometimes Rise of the Tomb Raider. Not exactly what you want to hear the day after you bought your brand new PS4 Pro.
Eddy, Caden, yeah, loving your investments.
Good.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, okay.
It is. It's still good.
4K.
Now, some of these issues don't seem like too big of a problem. In some cases, we're only talking about a handful of dropped frames, so, livable, deal withable, but that, of course, won't stop the internet from freaking out about it.
Obviously.
You've got detractors saying this means the PS4 Pro is a total waste of money, others saying this was to be expected, and the other visual upgrades make it all worth it in the end.
Since these revelations started with Skyrim, we'll recap those issues first. Yesterday, Digital Foundry released their analysis of the Special Edition's performance, which was a bit of a mixed bag. Their study revealed that the game, which runs at true native 4K rather than checkerboard 2160p, does provide a clear upgrade on the Pro in terms of raw visuals.
However, in similar situations, particularly scenes heavy on alpha transparency effects and probably mountains of cheese, the PS4 Pro suffered a frame rate drop. That drop was only 2 to 3 frames, really negligible when you get down to it, but they did say it made for a noticeable stutter compared to the old and busted PS4. According to them, the experience doesn't feel quite as smooth when running at 4K. They also, though, did acknowledge this is not a deal breaker.
The internet acknowledges not a deal breaker? Oh my goodness.
Well, look, some people can be reasonable. Not everybody, but sometimes it happens.
Proud of you, internet. But the problem doesn't stop there. While some slight frame rate errors might be a bit understandable for a game trying to rock a native 4K resolution, people might be a little bit less sympathetic to the problems experienced with The Last of Us, which runs worse on the PS4 Pro even in regular 1080p.
The upgrades Naughty Dog provided for the game include 30 FPS in 2160p or a smoother 60 FPS in 1800p for 4K TV owners, which turns into a 1080p at 60 FPS for older TVs. But Digital Foundry found in their playtest at 1080p that the game suffered fairly frequent performance drops, writing, "In some scenarios, the standard game runs at a locked 60 FPS, while the Pro may drop frames."
Bad Pro. No. Shame on you.
Don't drop.
Bad Pro.
No.
One of the big problems here is a technique known as super sampling, which is turning into a bit of a double-edged sword. Super sampling is usually great for PS4 Pro owners who don't have a 4K TV because it helps games look better by rendering more lines of resolution and then scaling down to 1080p. It results in a much clearer or sharper image for 1080p TVs.
Hey, that's kind of what we do for news, because we have a 4K camera, but we only output in 1080p because there's no 4K B-roll.
Whoops.
But we record in 4K and then shrink it, and it actually looks a lot clearer than if we were recording in 1080p.
We learned something today.
So that, for example, however, in this instance, that is with PS4 Pro, rendering all the extra pixels is making it harder for The Last of Us to run at 60 FPS. So that means that even in 1080p mode on a regular HD TV, the more expensive console is performing worse than the older model. And there's no way to tell the game to run natively on the PS4 Pro, so it's gonna happen to you no matter what if you're on that system.
Once again, RIP. Deus Ex is a bit more puzzling because in some cases the PS4 Pro improves the visuals, but in other cases they found that the frame rate drops as much as 20 frames.
That's more than the 2 to 3 for Skyrim.
That's a lot. That's significantly a lot.
If you're doing math at home.
Digital Foundry writes, the alpha-heavy conclusion to the first mission sends frame rates plummeting on Pro, while they're closer to a more solid 30 FPS on base hardware.
Similarly, Rise of the Tomb Raider runs into some of these problems as well, although they say that in 4K and at 60 FPS, that game looks phenomenal too.
Only if her boobs are great.
And hair.
And hair.
It's all about the hair
That's
technology.
true. Her hair
these
technology
days.
is just like on point. While they insist that for most part, games they've tested work just fine on the PS4 Pro, Digital Foundry also acknowledged that it's certainly a bit of a disconcerting trend, especially when you've got brand new hardware that's supposed to be more than twice as powerful as the original console. In general, consumers shouldn't have to be settling for graphical problems when the promise of the machine is that you'll get a performance boost for your money.
So, as far as how big of a deal it is, it kind of depends on what kind of equipment you're working with and what you're expecting out of the Pro.
Between 4K and HDR, you're looking at a significant jump in image quality. HDR in particular is said to greatly improve the fidelity of The Last of Us, for example. So at the end of the day, you're talking about a game running in 1080p at 60 FPS or 1800p with occasional drops from 55 to 56 FPS. For most people, they'll take the second one because of how much better it looks and how much higher of a resolution you're dealing with.
Right, you lose a couple here and there, it's still gonna be great.
It's a give and take.
But if you don't have a 4K HDR TV though, and that, let's be honest, is most people, even if you have 4K, you might not have HDR. If you want 4K and HDR, please check out our Black Friday gaming deals video because there are a bunch of 4K HDR TVs that are about to go on super sale. But the problems start to glare a little bit more on some of the older TV sets, and that's because of the super sampling. It seems to be tough for a few of these games, and if you don't get any of the other resolution improvements or the same performance, it seems like there's not much of a point to having a PS4 Pro.
It's a waste. Don't get the sandwich. Again, we should stress that Digital Foundry and others have reported that other tests have shown different games to run superbly on the new hardware. Infinite Warfare, Uncharted 4, and a bunch of PSVR titles, for example, have been singled out as strong examples.
Now, as for whether or not these new games signal a troubling trend, it is also possible, in fact, it's likely that we'll be getting more patches once developers start optimizing their games better. Think of it as another first round of new generation games where the optimization's not quite there because it's new and the developers aren't as used to working with it, and then as you get further into it, everything gets real slick.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the same kind of thing as developers get more accustomed to optimizing for that hardware. But in particular, sounds like just games may also need a native mode so they can run the way they're designed to on the base model. So really, when new games come out and they're designed from the ground up to take advantage of PS4 Pro as well, that will also be a good thing. All these games that we're talking about have been out a while, and so they're kind of doing a lot of this retroactively.
Yeah, don't be too hard on the sandwich. It's getting there. It's getting there.
Delicious sandwich still.
Delicious sandwich. But more than anything, there needs to be a standard for Pro improvements. From the leaks we got about the system before its announcement, it sounds like Sony did have a list of guidelines for developers to follow for the Pro, but for some reason they didn't standardize what kind of improvements developers should be making.
Yeah, considering how different gamers have different priorities, it seems like the games that offer multiple visual modes offer the best experience, so far at least, writes the True Meter. For example, offers a 1080p 30 FPS with improved graphics mode, or you can decide you want 1080p at 60 FPS, or 4K 30 FPS options. Final Fantasy 15 similarly will offer a 4K 30 FPS mode and a 1080p 60 FPS mode, which makes a lot of sense because some people will want 60 FPS more than they want 4K, or they don't have the 4K TV yet until Black Friday. And some people will just want better graphics with higher levels of detail. It all comes down to what gamers want. It's like almost like PC games.
It's a lot of numbers, a lot of details. Over time, we expect Sony and other developers to figure out what works best and what hits the most sweet spots for gamers. This is a brand new era in console gaming, after all, which was always going to have a bit of a learning curve. And upgrading old titles probably wasn't ever going to go 100% smoothly. Doesn't mean we're any less impatient, though.
Still, it would be good for Sony to figure these things out as quickly as possible, because what you don't want is a perception among gamers that the PS4 Pro breaks its most basic promise, which is to be extra awesome.
And extra pretty.
And barky. Whose dog was that?
Super barky. What do you guys think of some games running worse on the PS4 Pro? Let us know in the comments.
And for future updates on all your gaming hardware and office dogs, like this video and subscribe to The Know. Oh, and if you don't have anything to do this weekend, Rooster Teeth's extra live stream is running from tomorrow morning through Sunday morning. It's going to be 24 hours of crazy shenanigans and ridiculousness and
all the shenanigans
and torture for the kids.
So
you should check that out. You can watch it on the Rooster Teeth channel on roosterteeth.com, and we'll be there and we'll be doing stupid shit.